Good afternoon to you. Mark's out of HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. July 1st, 2020. Made it through half the year. All right. You know, they always say that the second half of the movie, in this case the analogy being 2020, it's always more impactful and exciting than the first half. That's where the climax usually is of said movie. That being said, we do have hurricane season to get through, and it does look like all the players are on the field, as they say, for a very busy time ahead. We were done now with the month of June. The first of 6 months of the hurricane season is now behind us. We had, of course, one landfalling system there with Tropical Storm Cristobal, fairly impactful event. And then, of course, we had Dolly that formed and moved on out. No big deal with that system. So what does July usually hold in terms of potential for activity? Well, as you know, if you've been following hurricanes for any length of time, July is typically another month of relatively low activity, and we're going to get to that in a moment. First, though, let's get this part out of the way, and that is a look at the tropics. I think the most notable thing is the increase in overall cloud cover. A lot more in the way of convection down here with the intertropical convergent zone. Flare up from the tropical wave here approaching the islands, but strong upper level winds are opposing that system coming in from the opposite direction. Off the southeast coast, we have this troughiness going on, this upper level low over New England. Some unsettled weather through here, but nothing looks to develop out of that. The eastern Pacific still remains fairly unsettled overall, but here too, nothing seems to be getting its act together and organizing into anything that we need to be concerned with. So now, let's take a look at what we have for the month of July. This is the first third, July 1st through the 10th, and these are your points of origin through 2015. Let me just show you this real quick from Phil Klotzbach. He has done a plot that goes through last year, 2019, and we've only added a few more in those years. This is the entire month of July. July Atlantic name storm formation locations. So this is all of the month of July. And what's notable here is that we finally do open up the main development region in the month of July, but a majority of our systems are either in the Gulf of Mexico or clustered right off the southeast coast. This area is usually more in an El Nino type year. This area is more typical of a La Nina or cool neutral, or honestly just non-El Nino years. And that's where we are this year, as a non-El Nino year. So I would expect that in July, I'm going to place my bets that we get a development or two in this region between the west coast of Africa here and the Lesser Antilles, this area of the so-called main development region. So back to the other map. July 1st through the 10th, these are the points of origin and the tracks that were usually taken when something did develop. And you can see in the southeastern Pacific, that is the busiest area overall. But there are a few cases here over the last many years of development, all the way out even close to the coast of Africa. But it's rare. You know, we typically don't see it starting to ramp up until latter parts of August. So let's move ahead. The next third of July, what could we expect? The 11th through the 20th. Oddly, it kind of calms down in the far eastern Atlantic. Nothing out there. So really, this period is less active overall, clustered mainly here in the western Atlantic basin. And then, as you get towards the back third of July, it starts to pick up again as we approach the so-called Cape Verde season. More activity again out here, pretty uniformly distributed in the main development region, clustered in the Gulf as well, and then right here along the southwest Atlantic and a few random areas out here near the subtropics. So all in all, July fairly quiet, and that's really a good chart here that Phil put together. When you put them all together, all 31 days of July, not that busy compared to what's coming in August and September. Another interesting and important tweet here from Dr. Klotzbach, and of course, if you don't know who this is Phil Klotzbach, the meteorologist at Colorado State University, specializing in Atlantic Basin seasonal hurricane forecasts. And if you follow him on, if you're a friend of his on Facebook, he does some great photography. It always looks like he's hiking through the Shire from J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy world of the Shire. Anyway, just a little, I know Phil personally, and I love his pictures. So the professional side of Phil talks about today the current North Atlantic sea surface temperature pattern matches up extremely well. This is extremely important, okay, with the July sea surface temperature pattern that has historically been associated with active Atlantic hurricane seasons. So he's doing that detective work that we talk about. If we look at what we have right now, we look out there right now, what's it look like? Open the window, look out and see. Instead of, what's the forecast showing? Is there anything brewing in the pipeline? Whatever. Just for a moment, every once in a while, you got to make observations, okay? You can forecast till you're blue in the face, but the forecast is always based on observation to start. Very, very important. You have your input, and that gives you your output, and the input is always based on observation, and observation is the foundation of all research as well. So, that being said, what do we got? We can look at this map, and as I have been showing you for months and months now, and we look at sea surface temperatures a lot, the anomalies here, the departure from normal, is quite substantial down in the tropics and up along the northeast part of the tropical Atlantic as well. Colder up north, as you can see here, warm down in the deep tropics, and that, if we go and look at, okay, this is the observation, what about the past? Well, here's what it looks like when you say, show me sea surface temperature profiles of active seasons from July. All right? And there you go. That's what it would look like. And so we can go back and look in the past to give us an idea of what might happen in the future. And I mean, that is an incredible correlation, as you can see there, the way that it matches up. Very warm here. This ring, not quite all the way up into the far North Atlantic, but close enough. In fact, I misdrew. It really shouldn't go up near Iceland. That'd be pretty bad. But this ring here, this horseshoe shape overall, a sideways horseshoe, very defined in the data from the past. You go and you look at, well, what does it look like right now? And it's very, very close overall. All right? So I'm just trying to keep you on your toes. I know we have a lot going on in the world. I get it. But, folks, we got 1 month down. We got 5 to go. And we are approaching, as you know, the busier time. That's what usually is August and September. But there are indications that July could be a little bit busier. So anyway, here's another look at the anomalies from the daily. This used to be the NOAA NESDIS chart. Now it's the NOAA Coral Reef Watch chart, whatever. And this gets updated every day. It's always a day behind. So here it is for June 30th. And again, that classic look, very warm. I mean, my goodness, all around here, the Southwest Atlantic, that's truly remarkable. The warmth of the water there relative to average. And then the cool look, almost La Nina, not quite. It's more of a cold neutral or cool neutral. And the important thing here that I've been talking about for several weeks and a couple months now, if not more, the lack of El Nino. No El Nino is the number one. That's it. No El Nino is a huge clue. And then you just go from there. Do you have an El Nino? No. Okay. Is the Atlantic warmer than normal? Yes. Those two together start to become very important. And then you add in other things like the very strong African jet, the African easterly jet, the AEJ, and the tropical waves that will produce. That's also strong. We've seen research and work from people like Eric Webb indicating that the Sahel region of Africa has been wetter than average, this area right through here, and in some cases, historically so, way above the long-term average. And that means that the tropical waves mean business, all right? So all these things adding up, this is the quiet time right now. Do something, okay? Think about your plan, whatever it takes. You know, this is the look. We've talked about it. We're enjoying some quietness, but that might end. And Eric Webb tweeting about that today, saying, for what it's worth, the latest Euro Weeklies forecast the East Atlantic main development region to be much wetter than normal the next several weeks, owing to an increase in African easterly wave activity. Certainly can't rule out a few tropical cyclones. Wow. A few of them east of the Antilles before the real Cape Verde hurricane season begins in mid to late August. So let me go back to this chart one more time. So I'm going to tell you what, we call this keys to the game. So, and that word game, I'm reluctant to use it because it implies that we don't take this very serious, but of course we do. So just disclaimer there. The keys to the game, and I try to put things into terms you can understand. And even though we don't have any sports right now to speak of, we remember sports, and we know that they have these keys to the game, okay? Whether it's football, basketball, whatever the case may be. You got your players, you got your coaches, everything's set up, it's game time. Well, what do we look for? What players should we look to break out and do well today in today's game? That kind of thing. Who's sick? Who's maybe nursing an ankle injury or whatever. Maybe their wrist is not doing so well. Basketball, football, baseball, that would be a big deal. That can affect the outcome of the game. Keys to the game. So for me, the big keys to the game we've got so far, on the positive side that we know are there, no El Nino, warm Atlantic, those are there. Strong African waves, etc. Those three things are already there. The unknown that hasn't happened yet are and is and would be the development of these systems that Eric's talking about. So, with that nice setup, hopefully, you understand that. For me, I should have like a ESPN swoosh sound or whatever. Keys to the game. Mark's keys to the game will be for the month of July. Do we get development in this area of a named storm or more? You know, more than one. And if it's three or more, Katie bar the door, all bets are off. It'll be one of those seasons that we will never forget if it's three or more named storms. So Eric says a few. So let's say 1 to 3 in this box are my keys to the game. If that happens, 1 to 3. 3 is like, whoa, look out. 1 is like, all right, we expected that. Eric talking about in his tweet, like I showed you, with the way the pattern is setting up, that he can't rule out a few tropical cyclones east of the Antilles. Now, saying that you can't rule out is not the same as saying I am forecasting that. So don't put words in my mouth or Eric's mouth, and I'm making sure I point that out. But this data right here from the Euro Weeklies is very important. Your ECMWF, the EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System, total precipitation anomaly in inches is, you know, up here in the blue. And yeah, that's quite a bit. That's high. Okay, that's a strong anomaly for the time period coming up through the 13th of August. Between now, this is the next 45 days, put it that way. All right, so there you go. All right, so the models. Do the models show anything? Well, the GFS from the 12Z run today, really not much. Okay, we look out across the entire Atlantic basin. You notice a couple things. There's a tropical wave there. Maybe a weak one right there. Trough off the East Coast. Strong high pressure out here. But nothing coming together just yet. It's still kind of early. But you can track those tropical systems coming across. This is the next 6-7 days. There you go. Day 8. Maybe some activity from a vortex that comes off the continent. We talked about that yesterday. GFS has been playing cat and mouse with it. Yeah, it develops. No, maybe not so much. We'll see. But even here at a week out, there's another tropical wave right there. So we'll see what happens. The one caveat to this whole idea that we may see some development, true development, a named storm 2 or 3, east of the islands is the Saharan air layer. That these strong tropical waves coming off also come off with a lot of Saharan air and dust from time to time. And that could be a mitigating factor against Eric's, it's not even Eric's prediction, it's just Eric's observation that the stage is set for some activity, a few named storms, as he said. So we'll see. We'll be able to track all of that. So let's look, it's not like I'm going to be gone for a month. But on July 31st, we will revisit this. I'll save those graphics, and let's see what happens, all right? So I think that's very important as a precursor as to what to expect as we enter August, now 30 days away. This is day 1 of 31 days. We have 30 left. Hey, I can count. All right, so there you go. That's a look at what's happening. And again, enjoy the quiet time. Do something to get ready. If you've got a generator from one of the previous hurricane seasons and you turned it on, you did anything with it, get it tuned up. Check it out. If you bought one and you haven't used it yet, read the owner's manual. Go on YouTube. See a tutorial about it. Just understand it. Talk to your family. Yeah, what are we going to do? We want to deal with this COVID thing and evacuation. How are we going to deal with that? We got pets. We got somebody that needs oxygen. We have a child that's very susceptible to changes and may get really upset about it. We deal with all of these things, and you don't want to have to deal with them under a great amount of stress when one of these things right here is looming. All right, so get it done now. Use this time wisely. That's the best advice I can give you. All right. Hey, as always, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, I'm on Twitter at HurricaneTrack. YouTube is HurricaneTrack as well, supported by our awesome patrons on Patreon. You can check that out. The link in today's update. And we'll talk more about Patreon later on, some things I'm doing with it that are going to really be nice. Adding to it always, thanks to the support we're able to grow. It feeds back. It's awesome. And we'll talk about that at a later time. In the meantime, have yourselves a great rest of your Wednesday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me the time of day. I appreciate it. Hope you learned something. I'm Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.